Hi, my name is Indra. I help skinny guys go from skinny to aesthetic as soon as possible. So how long does it actually take to go from skinny to aesthetic? I'll be honest, it can actually take a very long time, and it can take a very short time, very much depending on your genetics, your goals, your specific goals, your consistency, how hard you train, etc. There's so many things that comes into play on how long it'll take. So it can take very long and it can take not so very long. Depends on how serious you want to take this. The greatest thing I will say about being skinny, people don't talk about this a lot, but it's one of the greatest things. You'll see so much gains in the beginning, more than most people, because of something called newbie gains. Basically, the first year you start training, that's when you build the most amount of muscle. And every year you build more muscle, the less muscle you gain every year. And when you've trained for like 5 years consistently, bodybuilding, you'll maybe get 1 pound per year, right? So you should be happy that you're in the skinny position right now, because that's when you see the most gains. Just something to keep in mind. By the way, when I've gained your trust, the first link in the description is my coaching package for skinny guys to help you transform your body fast. Becoming aesthetic looking and becoming jacked, they're two separate things. They're not the same. You can be jacked and aesthetic, but they're not the same. The aesthetic look basically comes from having low body fat, but enough muscle to make you look aesthetic. Certain muscle groups, for example, the shoulders, right? The lats. But you can still be somewhat skinny and look aesthetic. You can actually be quite skinny and look aesthetic when your shirt is off, but you're not jacked. And you can also be jacked but not look aesthetic, right? So they can be two separate things. Now what we want to do is have both. We want to become jacked and look aesthetic, and that's the hard part, because I see a lot of skinny guys, they actually look aesthetic, but they're not jacked, right? They don't have a lot of muscle, but they have enough to get that little aesthetic looking feeling, right? But their muscle don't really like show through the shirts like that. And if you're watching this, I'm assuming you want to be jacked and aesthetic, not just one of those. I teach people specifically how to get aesthetic. That's what I teach. But when I teach it in a way that makes you become jacked as well at the same time. So just keep that in mind. That's something you might have never thought of, but there is actually a difference between jacked and aesthetic. So just lifting heavy shit, it won't automatically make you become aesthetic. There's a lot of people who lift heavy shit for like 3 reps and they train for strength. So you can train for strength and hypertrophy. A lot of people, they train for strength and not for hypertrophy. And they think they gain a lot of muscle, but they mostly just gain strength. And people who train hypertrophy, typically, most of the time, actually train strength as well, without maybe even really thinking about it. So you can train the both of them. So if you want to become aesthetic and jacked, I really recommend training for hypertrophy. Just something to keep in mind. So why am I even talking about the difference between jacked and aesthetic and hypertrophy and strength training? Because depending on which goal you have, one of them can take way longer than the other. Typically, getting jacked in general will take way longer than just becoming aesthetic. Because as I've said, you can be skinny and aesthetic. And you can be somewhat chubby, but jacked, right? Now, typically when people think jacked, they think of someone aesthetic. But that's what we want. We want the aesthetic look and being jacked at the same time, right? So just know that getting jacked can take way longer than becoming aesthetic, and vice versa. But typically, if you're starting from a skinny point like I did, becoming jacked will take way longer than just becoming aesthetic. This is just something I never thought of the first days that I started training, which it would have been helpful to know. This is the dumbest thing I see skinny guys make, and I used to make this mistake as well. I don't know what the hell I was thinking. I didn't have a clue what I was doing back in the day. I just hoped I was doing the right thing. So I was skinny. I started from a very shitty position. And what I would do is thinking I had to cut. It's like, you're already skinny as hell. You already have no muscle. And you have the audacity to say that you're gonna cut. Are you serious? I see a lot of like skinny guys and people who don't really weightlift and shit, and they want to become you know, jacked and aesthetic and look good and shit. And they just don't even lift weights, first of all. And then they think cutting is the main thing. I'm like, bro, you barely have any muscle or body fat, and you're out here thinking you should cut. Are you serious? You're skinny, you don't lift weights, you don't have a lot of body fat, and you still think, let's cut. That'll work. That'll make me become jacked and aesthetic. No. So if you're skinny or very skinny, which I'm assuming you are because you clicked on this video, you are going to have to bulk up first. I know that might suck to hear, or you might love to hear it. Whatever. You are going to have to bulk up first. That means you're gonna have to gain a little bit of body fat. You're gonna have to bulk up and build some muscle first. But then later on, as you're bulked up and you build a little bit of muscle, then you can finally maybe be able to cut whilst building muscle. Yes, that's possible. Not in every situation. When you're very skinny and you're starting from a skinny position, it's extremely difficult to just gain lean muscle mass. It can work, but I wouldn't recommend it. It won't like, it'll go a lot faster if you just bulk up first, right? And when I say you bulk up, I mean like you train hard. You train the right way, you train the right muscle groups, and you eat a lot. You don't just eat a lot and don't train and think that's gonna do a lot. Make sure to also go gym and don't just say, oh, I'm bulking, and then you don't even train. Like, also here's just a bonus tip. Have a specific goal in mind. I was talking to someone the other day and he wanted a bit of help with his training and stuff, but he doesn't have a specific goal on what he wants, which can make it very difficult to even know where you're going, to even know what you're gonna do, to even know where you're gonna train. Have a specific goal in mind and you'll figure stuff out. I'm assuming you're watching this and you're not like, oh yeah, this is just gonna be a 30-day thing. Hopefully you're watching this thinking, yeah, this is gonna be for the rest of my life. Maybe not, but I would highly recommend you look at this as a marathon and not a quick sprint. Because what's gonna happen if it's a quick sprint? You do it for 30 days, you get the results, or some results, and then you're like, now what? Now what? Right, so don't even think of it as a sprint. You want this to become long-term, a consistent habit that you do year-round. Now it's harder for me to stop training than it is to like start training, even if it's like uncomfortable and it'll take discipline for me to train. I can't imagine a life where I don't train, right? And I want to get you to the same position. So now it's just a lifestyle for me, and I envision myself training till the day I die, honestly. It's not just a hobby for me, it's a lifestyle. Again, I will say, it depends very much on your specific goal, your consistency in the gym, how hard you work out, how many sets you do per week, how much you eat, your recovery, etc., etc. So many things comes into play on how long this will take and how you train, how long you train for, how you look at it, everything, right? So it's hard for me to say how long exactly for you will it take. But assuming you do everything right, which is difficult. It's extremely difficult in the beginning to do everything right. Let's assume you do everything right and you have the same genetics as me. It shouldn't take you too long. You should be realistic, of course. What took me 4 to 5 years could take you maybe 1 to 2 years or 3 years. It's going to be different for everybody, but you can 100% super optimize and super fast track your progress like crazy and make faster progress than everyone else around you if you just really optimize everything. And trust me, when I say that, it's so hard to go through alone. It's so hard to go through alone because there is so many different challenges that comes up that you never even fucking thought of. And they come like a motherfucker. And I've seen so many people quit. So many people say they're gonna go gym, they're hyped the first month and then they quit. Like every time someone says, oh, I'm gonna go gym now, I'm like, sure. Honestly, because I see it all the time, they always quit. They always quit because there's always something that comes up. And I've managed to push through all of it and managed to stay consistent, and now it's just a lifestyle. And I want the same for you. So there's so many things that will come up, trust me, life will come up and things will come up and confusion will come up and feeling unmotivated will come up. Feeling undisciplined will come up. Not having energy to do it will come up. So many random different things will come up. Those are just a few examples at the top of my head. There's so many others. And I wish I had someone to like just guide me through it. And that's exactly why I created my own coaching package. And that's just everything I wish I had when I started out. It's the first link in the description, because I just know how hard it is to go through alone or with people who just don't understand you or whatever. So check it out if you're interested. And yeah, that's it. Peace.